Welcome everybody. My name's David Wood and I want to introduce this European Community H+ meeting today, 27th of July. It's a second in the series, and the topic that we're going to be focusing on today is Transhumanist success stories. What can we learn? We have a number of speakers lined up who in various ways are going to cover either some small success stories, that's for individuals or small groups who have been active in transhumanist endeavors for perhaps a smaller amount of time, and in some cases some larger successes with established groups. And in each case we'll be having a discussion amongst ourselves and also looking at feedback from viewers online about to what extent the methods that have been successful in one part of Europe or indeed overseas can be applied locally or indeed more widely. And although the meeting is focused on strengthening European transhumanists, we are welcoming viewers from beyond. There are people viewing from India and from North America, as far as I can see. And we also have one panelist, in fact two panelists from North America who will be sharing some of their success stories as well. As far as the viewing, then what viewers can do as well is to click on the Q&A button in the Google Plus page and submit any questions once you've heard what the panelists are saying that you'd like as panelists to consider. And you can also cast +1 votes or more in favor of some of these topics. Now, those who have been particularly looking forward to hearing from the Russian transhumanist movement, unfortunately, I just a few minutes before this call started had a note from Danila that saying there was an emergency, which meant that unfortunately he couldn't take part. Well, too bad on this occasion. I'm sure we'll have a chance to hear from him again, but it does mean that the rest of us on this call will have a little bit longer to talk about the things that we are doing. We're going to come to all the panelists shortly. As you may see, we have panelists from Germany, Holland, Poland, North America, Sweden, and also, again from Holland, from the Singularity Network. And I'm going to start this session by turning over to Amanda Stoel in, not sure which part of Holland, who's going to talk about an online success story, which is the Singularity Network. So, Amanda, you have 10 minutes or thereabouts to share what you have done and any lessons you think others might be interested in hearing.
Yes, hi. Well, I'm actually hailing from the center of the Netherlands. I am the chief administrator and co-founder of the Singularity Network on Facebook. And we started around 2008, and we have steadily been growing to about 15,000 members plus, and growing more each day. And the most fantastic part, I think, about the Singularity Network is that it's always alive. There is a lot of discussion going on about all kinds of transhumanist subjects. One of the success stories, I don't know, Singularity Network seems to have gotten its total own culture, which is, I think, pretty unique. Some of the reasons why this may have happened is perhaps because we have a very clear topic forum, and we try to divert different kinds of topics to other subgroups. For example, political discussions, which used to seem to fuel a lot of fires. We have now diverted those to different kinds of subgroups. And yeah.
So you said you started in 2008 and
Yes.
You have currently about 15,000 members in this online group.
Yeah, we do.
So that keeps you very busy all day long, handling requests from members and wading in, occasionally sorting out disagreements.
It does. It does. It actually we have an administrator panel, and it keeps us plenty busy. We have a lot of join requests, about 200 a day, and So we try to pre-sort them out a little bit, but not too much. Yeah, basically.
So is it your vision that people from all over the world should join this group? Or
Yeah.
should people make something that reinvents the wheel and copies what you've done?
No, no, it is our hope actually to unify transhumanists all over the world and people that are technologically progressive and believe in technological empowerment. So it is our hope to be able to discuss ideas that evolve around a positive, technologically empowered future. And as far as emulating, yeah, I think Singularity network is pretty unique, but if it can be copied, that's all more power to us.
Do you have particular goals that you have in mind for the network? Or is it just, let's see what happens?
Well, there have been some discussions about more ideas to develop it further, but that's more something that my other partner, the other founder, Jean-Sebastian from Canada, has taken upon himself. And so he's trying to develop something else. He has very specific ideas about that. And yeah, that's just more like all on the table still.
And what are your rules for kind of discussion topics that people can raise, or for the mode of discussion, the kind of mood that people bring to the topics?
Yeah, well, we try to keep everything rather on the positive side. So everything that is, towards a positive development in technology and science. It's not always easy. We have, through trial and error, found that it is actually very hard to discuss anything that has been politicized. So ideas that are in combination with certain political parties or feelings, that's actually almost undiscussable. Yeah, it's very complicated. People will very quickly lose their temper, and then we have to interfere, which is actually something that I would rather not do. I prefer actually people to just, have open and free discussions, to move ideas forward. But yes, we do have to step in sometimes and remind people to be civil. That when you call someone an idiot, all the ears they close.
So does anybody on the panel have questions or comments for Amanda? Hank?
I have a question. I'm just curious, like, how did you get so many people? How did you get 15,000? Did you have a strategy? Because there's a lot of other Facebook pages that only have 600. So how did you get 15,000?
Yeah, we actually didn't have we have zero strategy. We started with a group of friends, and I think it was in the beginning it was what 400 people that we mutually knew on Facebook that were transhumanists, and it continued from there. Actually, I think we got a lot of rather big boost after a little piece from Zoltan Istvan on the Huffington Post that seemed to draw in completely different people who were maybe unaware that there were transhumanist groups even. It does seem to be the case that many people that are transhumanist aren't necessarily aware that there are many Facebook groups that they can come to and talk to. I've heard it a lot.
And how did you end up being covered positively in the Huffington Post? Because that's something I think many other groups would wish for as well.
Yes, I was actually just approached by Zoltan Istvan, who was a member of our group, so more credit to him, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
And one question which I can address to you as well, and we'll see this coming to all the other panelists when they speak. This is a question from, and I'm afraid I can't pronounce the Russian characters in here. I think it's Elena. You can also on the panel see it by clicking on the Q&A button on the left. Elena asks, what are the criteria of success? So, I mean, obviously you have a large community, 15,000. Is there anything else that you would pick out as more than just numbers?
Yes, definitely. I think the fact that when you join the forum, it is always alive. There are always many conversations going on simultaneously, and it is usually quite high-quality conversations. So people bring forth interesting ideas and interesting perspectives, even if they are radically opposed to other perspectives in the group. And yeah, we even have some extremely religious members, and they still participate in ideas that many people would largely expect more atheist like people to be interested in. So yeah.
So part of it's not just V for volume, it's also V for variety.
Yeah, definitely. Variety, and the interest that people have in sharing this kind of news and actually talking about it.
Okay, great. So we're going to come back to you shortly, Amanda, but I want to make my way around the panel and give the other people a chance to explain what's happening in their part of the world as well. Next, I'd like to go to Sweden and Carinism, who is a representative of Människa Plus, which I probably have mispronounced as well. So, Carin, I know you're doing a variety of interesting things in Sweden. You've got about 5-10 minutes to share them with the world.
Okay, thank you very much, David, and thank you, Amanda. Very interesting to listen to you. I think starting off at the actual the question of what are successful transhumanist stories, to me, it's important to mention things like the fire or controlled fire and planes and glasses and things like that we take for granted, which have been hugely successful transhumanist technologies, but that were never labeled transhumanism in any way, or that existed long before the movement in itself. And to me, it's important to perhaps start there in what do we want to be achieved with the movement. Is it that our human condition will be easier to suffer through when we have been able to enhance our bodies and things around us, and perhaps starting there, because I don't always think that it's the fact that a group is large or that the people who are following a specific ism, that perhaps that is not the tying back to the question about what measures success, sort of. So I think sometimes projects can be very successful even when they're not labeled transhumanist, and I think about, for example, I have my background a lot in the trans movement, the queer movement, and so on. And that's a very well-organized global movement that are enjoying large success in a lot of countries, both when it comes to changing policy and when it comes to just changing public opinion. And so that is something that I would really like to really bring out as a success story, even though it's not something that's known to be transhumanist. It really is, because it's about challenging what was given to us, like the binary construct of gender and so on. So what we're doing right now in Sweden, or what we're starting to do this autumn, is also trying to actually connect with other groups that are doing things that should be, at least in my opinion, considered very transhumanist. So we're starting something called Queer App, which is, we're going to meet once, it's sort of like a think tank for how to use technology to eradicate the binary construct of gender, and talk about, for example, how Oculus Rift will be the first technology that we will be looking at, and seeing how that can be used to change how we see gender and so on. So to summarize, I think just looking at the transhumanist success stories that we have around us that have not been labeled that, and sort of claiming them. And to me, I think the greatest task for transhumanists today is sort of safeguarding against the word nature, or natural, or human nature, and so on. And that is something that we can see, for example, in the queer movement. We can see the importance of really doing that there too. As soon as someone talks about the natural, it's really, that's, to me, that's sort of the call, the bell to know when something, when we need to step in, when we hear someone really talk about this is what human nature is and this is what human nature isn't. That's sort of the should be to me the transhumanist call, sort of. Yeah, so I think that's.
I think you've got some potential conferences or meetings set up in the future in which you're going to be challenging people to step across the line, if I remember that correctly.
Precisely. That's the other sort of, it's a mini conference this autumn, which is just like you said, it's called Crossing the Line. And we will try to sort of find the tech enthusiastic diaspora, the people who really sympathize with us, but who aren't a part of us yet. So there are different organizations in Sweden, about perhaps 12, 15, that are in different ways, like the Geek Girls or Hackers Against Homophobia and so on. So we're going to try to have as many as possible sort of meet up and to have media attention prior, so sort of people who don't even know that is, because I think that's the problem. People don't even know that this is a great community to be a part of, even though they really sympathize. So and the reason it's called Across the Line or Crossing the Line is because that's sort of, it's going to be what we're discussing with each other, asking each other, how do you want to cross the line? Because there are many lines to cross, and different people want to cross different ones. So that's coming up. We're excited about that. And I think Hannes, who is also representative of the Swedish Transhumanists, will be speaking about some other things that are coming up. I would like to mention last, and perhaps Hannes will talk about this as well, but the translation of the Transhumanist questions and answers that exists now. We have a Swedish transhumanist who is making that, who's altering the design so that it will be as easy as possible to translate it for all of us into our own mother tongues, and also so that it can be easily accessible from both tablets and phones and so on. So that's a project that he's in contact with Natasha Vitamore about doing it as good as possible. But that's something that would be really great if many of us would sort of get involved in, because the more languages that this has been translated into, the better, of course. So yeah.
Because many of the original contributors to the Transhumanist FAQ, of course, were Swedish, or born Swedish, and so some of the thinking is already quite closely aligned to the Swedish mindset.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay. This conference you're doing, Crossing the Line, is it going to be positioned as a transhumanist conference or a Människa Plus event, or is it just something that's generally going to raise implicitly behind the scenes the transhumanist ideas?
It's going to be different groups who have labeled themselves differently, and I think we will be in majority, or that's what it looks like right now, but it will be labeled as the tech activists get together, sort of. So tech activists can mean a lot of things, and I think to a lot of us it's almost by default transhumanist, but not everyone would agree, and we don't want to force them into this terminology unless they're comfortable in it. So.
To what extent is your movement an online movement, and to what extent is it a group that meets face-to-face on a regular basis?
We meet face-to-face once a week at least, not during the summer, but usually. And it's been almost twice as many meetings during the spring, but that's almost, it's perhaps, I think Hannes can confirm these numbers, but I think it's perhaps 20% or maybe a little bit less who actually come to the meetings, and the rest of it is discussions online in a Facebook group and in a pretty active Facebook group. But there too, I think it's a lot of people who are just listening in rather than participating, and we want to change that, because I think. At least for me, I didn't know that transhumanists existed, and I really would have wanted to know that 10 years ago or something like that. So I think we're going to canvass as much of the Swedish and Nordic sort of community as possible to find the people who actually want to be, who want to hang out with us. Because I think one of the things that we can offer is to talk about technology in a way that's not sentimental. It's not sentimental, it's not biased against, and it's not biased towards technology, but just to be able to talk about, because I find that when not talking to transhumanists, the conversation can be very infected very quickly as soon as someone drops the nature word.
Or natural world, yes.
The natural, exactly. Then it sort of loses its rationality very quickly, and that's something that I really think that we can offer people, to have a less sentimental and more rational conversation about things that people talk about anyway.
Okay, well, we're going to hopefully have a rational conversation for the rest of this next hour or so, next hour and 10 minutes, as we continue this theme. I'd like to continue introducing the panel members, and then we're going to open up for a much wider discussion amongst ourselves and all the people viewing on air. For those of you who are viewing, don't forget you can click on that Q&A button and you can take part in some of the questions that are being raised there, and we will feed them into the on-air discussion shortly. Let's go to Kamil Muzyka, who is in Poland. The Polish transhumanist movement is in some ways a younger movement. It has had less time to develop grand activities, but there's lots of interesting things happening there. A few weeks ago, we had another member of the community online, but Kamil has slightly different things to share with us for the next 5 or so minutes. So, Kamil, maybe you can introduce yourself and what you've been up to.
Okay, my name is Kamil Muzyka. I live in Poland and I'm a, how do you say it, a IEET intern, that stands for the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. You probably know that institute is run by James Hodges.
James Hughes.
Yeah. Hughes, yes. And it's mostly concentrated on things like non-human personhood and the Africa Project. Well, my main goals and my main activities are giving lectures on scientific and sci-fi conferences, mostly on not especially transhumanist as a whole, but on the idea of AI personhood and the right of the uploaded persons. Because I'm a lawyer. I'm an educated lawyer. My specialty is industrial property law and patents.
Okay. And so what kind of lectures have you been given, and how do these work? Are these online or are these face-to-face?
Mostly face-to-face. Poland has a slight problem with vid conferences, especially as you recall, even when Marcin was speaking, he had some tech difficulties. These are typical Polish broadband difficulties. I mostly spoke at sci-fi conferences, but I did some real scientific conferences, like a transhumanist conference at Sosnowiec, at the Silesian University. Besides that, I tend to loop sometimes, and I forgot what I was supposed to say. Yes, I'm the Polish distributor of Gennady Stolianov's book Death is Wrong. You're probably familiar with
the book Death is Wrong, targeted at children.
Yes.
And have you been translating that into? Now we can see it. Yes.
Yes,
in translating, distributing the English language version, or are you producing a Polish version?
The English language. After the translation, we'll try to publish it in Poland via the Czarna Owca Publishing, the Black Sheep.
Right.
And about our movement, well, the Polish H+ group. Let me just show you the main banner. Oh, Google, don't do this to me. Yeah. Here we go.
You're going to share your screen. We're going to see the page. Yeah, there we go. Plus H.
Yes, Transhuman. Okay. Yeah, and this is oh, right.
We can still hear you.
Yeah. It started about 3 years ago. I wasn't the founding member of this group. I joined after a year of its activity. There was an idea, and it's currently being established, to turn it into a Polish Transhumanist Association. I remember it was proposed by Jakub Nowosad, one of our oldest members, about a year ago when we're about to go. We call it how do you call it? Walking and going there as a flank. Mm, A echelon, oh yeah, an echelon, meaning to create a block, a whole, not a group, not not a simple panel or a simple lecture, but a series of lectures on conferences, and they were being named a H plus blocks, but it didn't work out because. Well, Jakub has been diagnosed with a spinal tumor, and this was postponed up to now. And currently, we're establishing this association statute. Our main goals will be creating transhuman conferences because Poland lacks those kind of things, and excuse me for saying that, but we needed to have here in Poland more scientific conferences about technology, about cybernetics and prosthetics, augmentations, cryonics, and we don't have those. We either have philosophical conferences around sci-fi ideas or animal rights or LGBT rights, which are part of transhumanism, but in our view, they're not the core of transhumanism. So anyway, creating conferences, being the intermediary for startups. For example, any group creating a special kind of software for BCIs. Like one group I'm currently helping with their patents. Well, as a person trained in prior arts and patent applications, and providing know-how and resources for those startups, and cooperating with R&D departments.
So it's not so much just talking about the philosophy of transhumanism, it's actually doing the engineering of the things that will enhance the human experience. Sometimes people complain that transhumanists talk a lot and don't get things done, and this seems to be an example of when things are actually being done. I mean, I believe in talking too. I do believe in philosophy. I believe in philosophy to sort out where we need to prioritize things, and but I also believe in getting things done, and I'm hearing some of that strongly from you.
Yes, that's a main problem, because even when my friend was asking me, hey, what are the transhumanists doing? And I said, well, they're developing newer technologies and so on. I was speaking about it, and suddenly he asked me, and what are you doing in the transhumanist movement? And I said, well, I'm a lawyer. So, well, that was well, he bursted out laughing because, well, a lawyer is someone who either defends or attacks some ideas, and here, well, as I heard from Paweł Chojnacki, one of our members, there are ongoing court cases where people with prosthetics are being charged with what's the word? Industrial property infringement by the companies that provided them with prosthetics. And that's one of the things we are going to do in Poland, is to establish a set of legal models for those kinds of things, because, well, Poland is a little backward country if you talk about technology, IP law, and so on, because many, even at the Polish Academy of Science, many legal researchers don't view open source as something material. They view the open source idea as mostly software. They don't see the open prosthetics or open bio, the open source hardware, where you can when where there are currently open source circuits, or well, I wrote an article for the IEET about patents, cyborgs, and the law, where I discussed the issue of intellectual property with people with prosthetics. The main idea I proposed was that the IP currents will be challenged by open prosthetics and 3D printers. Several months later, there was this case you may be familiar with, where a father created a 3D printed prosthetic arm for his child. That we may call one of my personal successes. I don't know if he read my article, but in some way it happened.
So this is a very interesting story. I think the clarification of legal issues is a very important thing that we should, some of us at least, get involved with. Many cases of potential improvements in technology are being held up because we are still living in a regulatory environment that made a sort of sense for the previous technologies, but is now out of date and is changing slowly. It's changing slowly partly because vested interests aren't in a hurry to change it. It's changing slowly also because many of the intellectual people involved can't get their heads around many of the new challenges of this technology and its possibilities. And I think we can do a lot in the transhumanist movement to clarify here's where the changes should be. Indeed, that's one of the topics that I have proposed we might cover in a forthcoming event.
Like there is a case I'll be working on at the Polish Institute of the Polish Academy of Science. Well, I'm at the Faculty of Industrial Property Law, and my work field will be chimerics, the human-animal chimeras and patents. And this is a quite transhuman idea, because currently you cannot patent human beings unless they are partenons. It's a word like that. They are not embryos, but they are effect of a parthenogenic stem cell creation.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest, Kamil, I'm going to suggest that you put the URL to that analysis or that paper into the event, ideally on the event page. I'm going to suggest something similar to all the panelists. I'm responding now to the question that Didier Cornell, one of the viewers, has raised, which is asking, we're talking about various success stories. Can we be sure that we publicize the URLs to the main site, to the websites where these things are discussed? In some cases, they're going to be in one language, such as Polish or Swedish or indeed English, but let's capture these so other people can view them later. So you can either drop them into the text chat window and I'll copy them into the event page, or even better if you go straight to the event page.
Okay, you mean the one with 3D prosthetics?
Anything that you feel is something that is a genuine success, whether a large-scale success or a small-scale success, something that you think other people might be interested to learn more about, either to work more with you, to take your ideas and develop them, or something that can inspire other people elsewhere in Europe, or indeed the world, to do something similar. So there might be several URLs.
Okay.
So thanks very much, Kamil. There's more to say, I'm sure, about many of these topics, but I'd like to finish the round of introduction of the panelists, and I'd like to move far west to California, which is not quite Europe, but there's two panelists from California in this hangout. I don't know which one is going to speak first. Hank Pellissier, who is the creator and the main inspiration behind the Transhuman Visions Conference, and also Hank has a co-worker there, Anna Petrova, who is curiously enough European or Russian, and working with Hank in creating that. So which one of you is going to speak? Let me know.
I'm going to go first and talk about what we've done so far and all my mistakes, and then Anya is going to take over and talk about how she's going to improve it in the future.
Great.
Okay.
Well, we got to be. This is the California spirit. We're not making progress unless we're making lots of mistakes.
Yes.
The way to make more successes is to have more failures. And
yes, exactly. I believe that. Let's see. So the reason I'm asked to be on this panel is that we've done 6 Transhuman Visions conferences in the last 6 months. They started in February. There's been a conference every month since February. The first 2 were simply called Transhuman Visions, February and March. And then in April there was one on the future of love, sex, and marriage. In May there was one called Religion and Transhumanism. In June there was one called Global Catastrophic Risks. And there was one just last night which was called The Future of Emotional Health and Intelligence. So we put on 6 conferences, and there's going to be another one in September on artificial intelligence and the singularity. So that's what we've done. The first 2 had attendance around 200 people, and that was great. I made money, which was wonderful. And then the third one, which was the future of love, sex, and marriage, that had about 80 or 90 people. And then the last 3 have had about, I would say about 40 people. So we need to get our attendance back up, and I think we're going to do that with the next conference, which is Artificial Intelligence and the Singularity.
So are people getting tired of transhumanism? They've had their fix, and now they're moving on to something else, the next biggest thing? Or what else do you attribute the slight decline in attendance?
Well, I actually don't think that. I actually think the Bay Area is a huge center of transhumanism, and then there's a lot of success stories around here. 2 examples are there's 2 meetup groups. Meetups are very popular in the Bay Area. There's a meetup group called Consciousness Hacking, and they get about 100 people per month at their meetings. This is also a center of quantified self. They get about 100 people per month at their meeting. There's another very popular group called Health Extension Salon, which is really sort of a radical life extension meetup, and they get about 75 people per month. And then plus, we're close to SINS and Singularity Institute, and almost every weekend there's a huge kind of quasi-transhumanist conference around here. So a lot of times there's competition, and other times, but I don't think people are bored of transhumanism. I think there's just an awful lot to do in the Bay Area for people who are transhumanists.
And did you say that you are moving from probably doing a conference a month to one maybe every 2 or 3 months?
I think that's Anya's idea. I think that might be a good idea. If I could, I'd like to talk just a little bit about why I wanted to do this. Mm-hmm. One is that in my 6 months ago, before I started doing this, my impression of transhumanism was that it was kind of an online community. And I didn't really like that. I thought that people should meet face to face, and that the best way to do that was to put on conferences. But my experience of conferences was that I usually didn't like them. So what I wanted to do, and also conferences can be very expensive. So our conferences are very low cost. You can get in for between $20 and $40, and you can see the same speakers that you would have to pay, maybe $150 to $500. Actually, I think SINS put on a conference recently, or it's coming up, and I think it costs $1,800 to go to. So what I'm looking to do is
the one in August, I think, in
yes, that's like
Santa Clara.
Yeah, it's like $1,800. So what I wanted to do was put on conferences with good transhumanist speakers that were affordable to the average person. And I think we can go to Anya now, and she can talk about the future of these conferences.
Well, we're going to come back to you as well, but let's hear from Anya.
Can you hear me fine?
Yes, it's great now.
Great, you see I got the mic. So, yeah, hi everyone, I'm Anya, and originally I'm from Moscow. I was born and brought up in Moscow in Russia, and when I came to United States, I got involved a lot with the different media and festivals, film organizations. I ran an independent film festival for some time. So when I came to the Bay, well, I've been into transhumanist subjects also for a long, long time. So when I came to the Bay, which I moved here about a year ago, I was very inspired suddenly to start some kind of a conferences that would deal with the subject. But my personal subject was futurism. And I have been referring to myself as a futurist already for a long time. So I wanted to start futuristic conferences. And I decided to see what's going on already in the Bay, and I came across Hank's conferences, started going to them, and I realized that that's exactly the same subject, that transhumanism and futurism, it's hard to really separate those two. They come together. They're like brother and sister of the ideologies. So I offered Hank my help when it comes down to media, website, graphic design, promotion, branding. And I have, since second conference, I started going to those conferences, and since about the fourth one, I think I started becoming very actively involved with helping bring this to more of what I see like a professional light, because I know that this conference has the largest potential right now to become the #1 conference in the Bay Area on the subject of transhumanism and futurism, because there is really nothing else here aside from, again, all the Singularity network and Singularity events that are dealing particularly with these two subjects as in one package. So eventually I came up with this brand logo that I'm going to try to screen share it right now for a second. Let's see, this one. Well, you can see it on the website, H+X, which means...
Yeah, we can see the picture H+X, and the URL there is h+x.com.
Yes, it is. By the way, if your antivirus complains something, neglect that, because I am aware of this issue. It's just we're gonna fix that. There's nothing malicious on this website, I promise. So the H+X, because H+ stands for transhumanism, of course, and X, for me personally, that is something that I have been using for a long time. X simply stands for futurism. So H+X it means transhumanism and futurism together. And this is our new website that we're just putting together right now, and we're going to have all videos from different conferences here all together. You will be able to comment on them, and we're going to try to create more of a social network here. So right now we have forum, but I don't know exactly if there's many posts here. We just installed it. But eventually what we would like to do is to create a social network online for the Bay Area transhumanists and futurists that will be well organized, and that will be a natural continuation of all those experiences that we have when we go to those conferences. Because I don't know if Hank mentioned, but one of the interesting and beautiful thing about these conferences right now is that ever since I started going there, I've noticed that it's almost like we're emerging a family. You can see some people, they keep on coming, then we have after parties, and then eventually I go there, it's like coming to see my family and all my friends, this network. So we're trying to build these connections. It's not just about the conference, it's not just about the talk. It's about building this, it's about the networking in this community. And that's probably the largest emphasis that we're trying to do over there. So
building a family network. You also mentioned becoming a bit more professional. Does that mean charging more for people to attend the conference?
Yes, we will really up the ante on all aspects of the conference, starting with the coming one, which will be in September. It will be dedicated to artificial intelligence. And starting with that one, yes, we will increase level of professionality on all levels, on all aspects, and I'm going to be taking responsibility of all the media and promotion and social networks. Hank is doing what he's doing, and he's doing it great. So we're going to try to basically see if it's going to be possible to launch it to become basically, I have an ambition to have it, to see it in the near future as the #1 conference on the subject in the Bay Area.
Great. And in terms of the forum that you mentioned, why don't you just use the Singularity Network as the forum?
Well, no, that forum is dedicated directly to the conferences, because if there are sections like Q&A to speakers, and then usually people don't have enough time to ask all the questions after each presentation. So when I saw that, I realized, well, why wouldn't we take it offline after the conference, so that right after the conference yesterday we announced, like, okay, everybody who has questions and I didn't have a chance to ask them offline, and then speakers will be able to answer them. So the forum essentially is the follow-up for each conference that we're going to be having.
Great. And this connection between transhumanism and futurism, so tell me a bit more about that. Does that mean that there'll be less transhumanism in the conferences, or?
No, we were talking with Hank. So yes, about the future of how we want to organize it. We were thinking of making it 4 times a year, and kind of link it to prepare them really well, and create subjects in advance. So have them be linked to seasons like spring, fall, winter, like fashion does. And probably have 2 of them being emphasized on transhumanism and 2 of them being emphasized on futurism. Because there's always a lot of overlaps between 2 subjects. It's impossible to separate them, but at the same time, you do want to put a focus on one of those. Like with these conferences that Hank was running right now, basically subjects were such as like radical futures, right, and existential risks. It is not so much of a transhumanism, but it's a futuristic subject as far as, let's think about how the future will unfold for the humanity. And then the AI conference, again, you really can say whether it's a transhumanism or futuristic subject. So that's why it looks to me that it will naturally be an emergence of these 2 things. So if, for example, a conference will be purely futuristic, you will still actually have transhumanists there. So you see, it's hard to separate those 2. So we'll see, but we're probably going to be juggling them around like 50-50, focusing on transhumanism and futurism more, but it's going to be a mix of both all the time.
Great. Hank, could you have anything to add to what you've just heard?
Well, actually, I'm looking over in the group chat, and somebody wants to know how to finance things.
Yes.
And I like talking about that. That's great.
I mean, because we have to be sustainable. You know, this is one of the principles of software development. You can't rely on heroism keeping you going. You know, the series of events I run in London, the London Futurists, had to change from one financial model to another so that it wasn't losing money every time, and that made a difference. So what is the financial model for your conference, Hank?
Well, I mean, the first conference was in San Francisco, in a place called Fort Mason, which is a pretty high-profile place, but it ended up costing me $4,600 to rent, and it was hugely overpriced. I don't mind saying that online. I'll never rent it again. I think even getting the Wi-Fi cost me like $480. It was just like crazy. So anyway, I gave up on San Francisco. I moved to the East Bay. I ran a place over there. I rented a place for 4 consecutive conferences that cost $1,100 per conference, and the one we did yesterday only cost $600 a conference. So, but you know, the ideal thing would be to find a place where you can just put on a conference for free, if you could get a sponsorship. Some other things that can happen to help you out if other people are wanting to put on a conference is to try to get sponsors who will pay you. The Artificial Intelligence and Singularity Conference, we have I guess I'll call him a sugar daddy, and he's putting up $1,000 or $2,000 because you know, he wants his organization to be featured, and he he is going to be a keynote speaker, and he is recommending various speakers. So that's not going to cost me anything to put that one on, and that's wonderful. And you can also, I've had other sponsors that have chipped in money. People like, well, Bulletproof Executive handed out free coffee. That's Dave Asprey's group.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity Plus did a lot of work for me. It wasn't cash, but they did a whole lot of publicity for me. IEET has generously paid airfare for a lot of speakers. And yesterday I had Posit Science, which is a sort of a brain training company. They were a sponsor, and I've had a nootropics company called Natural Stacks, which they didn't really pay me, but they handed out smart drugs. So I think maybe people came to the conference just to get the free smart drugs.
All right. Miriam, you've got some questions you want to ask about what you've been hearing. So Miriam,
Yes.
you are in Munich and one of the drivers behind the German transhumanist movement. But like many of the others on the call, you're actually a multinational person with all kinds of background.
Yes, because I'm also in, not really futurism, I need to call it strategic foresight, because when I say I'm a futurist, so no one really takes it too seriously. So my question is, you know, how serious is the term futurism taken? How is it perceived? And who are the persons, you know, interested in these conferences? Are there also entrepreneurs, decision makers, scientists? And if so, how do you get their attention about really thinking about such topics that may seem too far away or far-fetched for maybe the average person?
Anna, do you want to answer that about futurism, strategic foresight?
Oh yeah, so I was looking at that question in the chat about future and how it's being perceived. It's actually a really interesting question because, first of all, there's a lot of misunderstanding right now. There's a term conflict, and that is something that I think I'm going to try to force to get resolved, because what happens is that often, especially when you talk to people who are educated in arts, if you say futurism, they instantly think it's the Italian art movement of the beginning of 20th century. Because if you Google futurism in the most in Wikipedia, this is what you will see. But then somewhere at the bottom line, they will say, like, by the way, sometimes futurism is being used as a synonym for futurology, right? Futurology is more of an official term, but futurism is the term that we tend to be using here, and a lot of people that I'm working and communicating with, we use the word futurism. And the only dictionary, which I'm very actually happy and proud of, that actually defines futurism in the first place as definition as what we understand it now, is Google. If you Google futurism and look up Google dictionary, then they will say futurism is the science or something, I don't remember exactly right now, but the science of the future. And the second definition for them is the art movement. So I like the fact that Google is probably the most progressive dictionary now in this way. So futurism is being, I always find that I have to explain. I have on the business card, it says futurist. So every time I pass it on, people are like, oh, so what do you mean by that? And I think the closest, the first thing that I say is that, well, I'm just concerned about the future of humanity. That's the first thing that I would always say. And then if they want to get more details, you go into a whole lot of interesting things. And in fact, I have a project that I want to set up very soon online, which will be like a flashcards online, where in case you find yourself constantly explaining people all the different concepts of transhumanism and futurism, you know, mind uploading, all kinds of different things, you can just say, hey, go to this website, and there's like flashcards that all the main terms that you need to know about futurism and transhumanism. So it's going to like future101.net. I got the domain, but I keep on holding it for that project. So the futurism is being perceived very, like, there's a confusion right now in the society. But when you come to people like you guys, everybody knows what we're talking about. So it's really interesting. But as far as, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say that from my own experience at the World Futurist event, the World Future Conference a couple of weeks ago in America, many people there told me they prefer the term foresight and strategic foresight as well. And they said that exactly what you mentioned, that the term futurism seems a bit woolly, it seems kind of cowboy, whereas if you talk about sight, there's hindsight. When you look at the past, there's insight when you look at the present, and there's foresight when you look at what's likely to happen in the future. And when you do this in a professional and measured way, then that's what strategic foresight is all about. So that's interesting. But I've had a futurist on my business card since 2009 as well, and I've had lots of comments and jokes about what it does all mean, and I've had exactly the same discussions. I do agree with you that there's a close overlap between transhumanism and future thinking. Indeed, the definition of transhumanism in the Transhumanist FAQ starts off by saying transhumanism is a way of thinking about the future, and then it goes on and explains what that future definition is.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say one more thing quickly, is that in reference to what you just mentioned, I think when we use terms foresight and with relation to the future, this applies more to the business. So, like, you know, in the education, there will be like BA and BS, right? Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts. So if you talk about business and strategy, like what kind of technology is going to go up, you know, that's the foresight as far as the future. But when we say futurism, this is more about philosophical aspects of the future, and more about seeing, trying to perceive how society is going to change. It's more about arts and culture. So that's this is, at least that's my personal opinion, and that's how I see these two things.
Kamil, you had a question, I think, as well. Kamil, you had a question that you wanted to raise?
Yes, I would want to ask our US friends, how is it with the transhuman and the Silicon Valley connections? What I'm asking is, how does the Silicon Valley view transhuman values and transhuman goals, and how do their transhumanists view the idea that Silicon Valley could be a separate state with, well, as Hank wrote in the chat, one of the goals of transhumanism is eradicating poverty. When I heard about the ideas that the Silicon Valley would have, would be more business-oriented and R&D oriented to the core, it would rather eradicate poor people than poverty. And what do you say?
So, Hank.
Oh, yes, thank you, thank you. Yes, actually what I wrote is, let me see, I think transhumanists should be interested in eradicating poverty. That doesn't mean that all transhumanists are. In fact, I would say that they're probably not. I just ran a crowd-funded campaign to send Soylent to the Philippines because there's a community in the Philippines that I try to help out. They're like these really impoverished indigenous people that have a lot of intestinal parasites, and anyway, they're poor, and I think I raised $380 after 3 weeks. So there's not I wouldn't say there's a tremendous interest in either the transhumanist community or the Silicon Valley community in eradicating poverty. The emphasis on that particular thing I put up is should. That's just my personal belief that I think transhumanists should be, but not that they are. But I think that in general, the relationship between Silicon Valley and transhumanism is pretty good. It's very good. I think Silicon Valley is absolutely interested in the future. That is what startups are interested in doing, is creating technology that people use and that transform our future. So it's all in all, it's living near the Silicon Valley is great for transhumanism. I think it's why the Bay Area is probably the center of transhumanism, and I definitely know that I can get audience members from Silicon Valley, and I can get speakers from Silicon Valley. There's a big merging between those two communities.
Okay, let's move to some of the questions that have been raised in the Q&A by some of the different speakers. The one that's had the most votes, and we'll take that first in the principle of popularity, is does the panel think that there will come a time when transhumanists will come together as a whole to create a .org which can provide ideological and financial support for actionable transhumanist projects, such as the development of technologies? So this is asked by Alexander Carin. And that will be a sign of us really demonstrating success in the world when we are doing this. And so that's quite a broad-ranging question. We might want to chip into bits of that. So anybody got views as to whether that's a good thing that the transhumanist community should be doing, creating an org which can provide ideological and financial support for these projects? Or should we continue in a kind of a separated manner with different initiatives in different places?
Well, that will be very difficult to establish such a .com, because even if you view Facebook or Google groups focused on transhumanist ideals, even the particular group, the scientific transhumanism on Facebook, there are sometimes turf wars or flame wars about either should we should we chase the AIs, should we go after cryonics, or should we follow what De Grey says and about sense? And this is a very hard topic here, because well, if we got a strict amount of money, we have to go one way or another, and there will be conflicts unless we'll figure out a way to first do one thing, then do another. Prioritize.
Right, so this question has got the whole panel ready to speak up, so let's go around a few others. Carin.
I think that integrating open source more into our discussions and our common texts and so on would be a pretty stringent thing to do. I mean, that's pretty much the form equals content, and a lot of us believe that that kind of open source thinking is a big part of the future. So having collaborative texts and so on as a foundation of a site, it doesn't need to do all the things that like finance and all of it, but something where you can see what's going on, where you can have sort of what Anna was talking about with the flashcards is something that exists to a large extent when it comes to the already existing FAQ. So I think it would be really good to have sort of a place where things are gathered so that we don't do the same work over and over again. So sort of a platform where it's both collaborative texts and where it's possible to see all the projects that are going on at the same time. And I think that starting with making the FAQ more of a collaborative text could be a really good start, and to see how that goes, to see if the problems that Kamil is talking about will be too vast for it to be a success. But I think it would be a pretty logical thing for us to work in that manner, because that's what we're talking about, like hive mind kind of things.
Interesting. And last time I looked at the Transhumanist FAQ, I thought it was actually pretty good, but I'm sure there's a lot more that can be done to extend it. It can be found on the Humanity Plus website, amongst other places. But no, I agree. We should be providing clearer information to people as to what are the projects that are taking place, and which will avoid us reinventing the wheel often, and which can allow people to build more effectively on what's happened before. Hannes. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Hear me now? We can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah, should unmute. Just a couple of two real quick comments. I think that we should, this group here, really, we should commit ourselves to really expanding Humanity Plus in Europe. To me, this is very much what these Google Hangouts are about. My vision is that we should have active chapters in every European country. I think there is a potential for it. I think we can, I mean, Facebook is a wonderful tool for finding people and connecting people and helping establish groups in neighboring countries. And we should just, as an initiative, as an organization, which we are more or less associated with, all of us, help spread that. And by spreading the organization as a name, that also follows the ideas. Then there is a sort of a representative in every country who can be part of the public debate with the transhumanist perspective and so forth. So that would really be sort of my corporate vision for what we as a Euro transhumanist network should be devoting some time to. And then as for specific projects, I think that this is a wonderful idea that has been brought up by several persons, including Carin, to make sure that we have translated the transhumanist FAQ as well as the many wonderful Wikipedia pages that exist on transhumanist topics to all European languages. I mean, the English Wikipedia pages about transhumanism, they are great. The Swedish ones are not as great. We have tried and we have sort of initiated a small crowdsourcing project here in Sweden, where we sort of have a little competition. We reward people who contribute and translate new pages into Swedish. And I think that is a very easy way to involve people on a very small scale to sort of contribute something to the movement. Because after all, Wikipedia is the natural place for a lot of people to go when you want to know about something. So that was my quick thing to share.
So lots of interesting things there. Carin, you have some comments as well from The Hague.
Trust on me to make a slightly more cynical comment in this regard. Of course, the transhuman community is a wonderful community with a lot of people that get along wonderfully. But increasingly of late, I am seeing things just maybe not the best venue, like a public discussion that is going to be viewed by many people, but maybe it needs to be said, there are some elements in transhumanism that kind of scare me, and I don't need to descend into discussions about global warming or anything like that. I hear political statements, and some including from the US West Coast, which are anti-democratic. And I am sometimes a little pessimistic about the future of transhumanism, that it's going to be torn apart between politics, left and right, money, no money, primitivism, survival against blind-eyed optimism. I think transhumanism as a movement is under stress. Can I summarize it in that way?
We are under stress. I think that's true. I mean, we are in a time of great transition. As society as a whole has its fractures and challenges, we are going to be, in some sense, a microcosm of at least some of these challenges. And we have to try and apply transhumanist policies to avoid being unnecessarily ripped apart. I mean, I know that Amanda, in the Singularity Network, you have methods to try and prevent too much of too much fighting and too much of a disagreement. Amanda, let's come to you, and then we'll come to Miriam in a moment. I mean, you actually said that one of the reasons you'd formed Singularity Network isn't just to get a good online collaboration with a positive spirit, but also to provide some documentation that answers some of the questions that people were raising earlier about flashcards and so on. We can't hear you, Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Are you on mute? You've gone on mute. You come off. Amanda? Okay, we'll come back to Amanda in a moment. Miriam, maybe you had some questions as well, I think.
Yes, I also had a comment, and I think at least for representing or presenting transhumanism to the outside, to the general public, I think it is necessary that we at least provide a kind of united picture with a common interest and common goals, like for example the environmentalists are doing. They have their internal differences, but they have a common goal, and they are perceived by the general public as a kind of unified group with their specific interests. And I think that such a similar kind of representation could be good for transhumanism, with for promoting our specific interests, which are about, say, to fostering scientific thinking in societies, to improving rationality, to supporting science research and development, and the use of technology, or the individual decision for using technology. So I guess we have some common interests and some common issues that, you know, are more present in some areas and countries, not so present in others, which are generally important for our future. So I guess that it should be a good idea, you know, to come together as a whole and create a transhumanist unity, so to say, to the outside, and thus also, you know, spreading our ideas, getting support, and also getting financial support, which we can then internally distribute to specific projects. So that's a rather internal issue.
Amanda, let's try you again. The system shows you on mute just now. Maybe if you to come off mute, because I know you've got some fascinating things to say on this very topic.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's working better.
Oh, great. It was unmuted a moment ago, but I don't know why it suddenly didn't do anything anymore. But to come back to the question as to a bigger network, this is actually the foundation of the Singularity network, to network together with all transhumanists and to help facilitate each other and help each other's projects. And in order to do that, we've also started large information sections in the Singularity network documents. So we have listings of books, documentaries, projects, organizations, and all kinds of other transhumanist related ideas and thoughts. So,
right. So you would ask more people to build on the documentation and material that exists in the Singularity network, rather than creating brand new stuff.
Yes, well, we have already started quite a big database already in the beginning, since 2008. And we do actually get a lot of questions. So where can we find more documentation, information, and organizations about transhumanism or all these technologies? And well, then it's nice because we can link them immediately. We already have a really nice forum of 15,000 people. So it, in my opinion, would be a really good platform to, you know, to communicate all these projects to the world too.
So has any other panelists looked at the Singularity Network's documentation and thought, yes, I can use this, or no, I can't use this for their purposes? Sounds like we all need to do some reading and research. And I have to put on another hat at this moment. I have the hat which is one of the directors of the Humanity Plus organization. And the mission of the Humanity Plus organization, as created, is in part to do some of the same things, to organize some of the information about transhumanism worldwide, to organize a list of chapters. So in various ways we have done well, in various ways we have fallen a bit behind what's required. And so I see it as interesting that a few people in this call have actually said, hey, I find my information about transhumanism on the Transhumanist site hplus, humanityplus.org. So let's not all have lots of separate sites. Let's, where possible, build on each other's successes, whether it is the Humanity Plus site, whether it is Singularity Network, or indeed, as Hans was saying, people should be looking at Wikipedia. Well, inevitably they look at Wikipedia, so we should be keeping that in order too. Anything else, Amanda?
No, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So, Hank, let's come back to you, because you were talking earlier about the conferences you run, and I know that you have actually sometimes had some quite controversial speakers there, rather than having transhumanism as a nice unified group who always says the same thing. So what's your reason behind having this diversity of speakers?
Well, I became really familiar. I used to be a managing director over at IEET, and there were constantly fights. And in some ways, it was kind of upsetting, but it was also kind of fun. I think it actually, helped traffic and helped build community. In a way, for people to argue. The two biggest schisms I see in transhumanism are, of course, religion and politics. In religion, it's just the people who are atheists and think all transhumanists should be atheists, and that anybody who is religious shouldn't have anything to do with transhumanism. And the people that are religious, there's a schism there. And the other schism is in politics, and there's probably multiple schisms. The biggest schism I see there is between libertarians and social democrats, but there's also a very small kind of monarchist movement, that kind of anti-democratic thing. I've come under some flack with my conferences because, should I just name him? Anyway, there's a monarchist who I've put on stage 3 times, and people are always they're always asking me why do I do that? Like, why do I put him on stage? Am I supporting monarchism by putting him on stage? And am I a monarchist because I let a monarchist on stage? And the answer is no, not at all. I'm not a monarchist. I also put a lot of libertarians on stage. Like, I think Zoltan Istvan has been in every one of my conferences except once. He's a libertarian. I am not. I am not a libertarian. I am not a monarchist. I'm a social democrat. I also have to put on conferences, and I want people to hear multiple points of view. And I actually think that it's great for all the different schisms to have clearly articulated points of view, and for us all to debate with each other about that. So that's my opinion. Yes, there are monarchists in the U.S. Somebody just put this in. You could, I guess, Michael Anisimov gets called out an awful lot, and he's the person I put on stage 3 times.
So we're starting to run out of time. There's a lot of interesting questions that's been raised. What I'm going to do in a moment is ask each of the panelists to offer some closing remarks. But first, I want to quickly run through a couple of the questions that have been raised. One question is answering another question in part. So the question is by SX Blondino, who basically says, look, do you have relations in the Humanity Plus world? Do you have relations with companies that can finance doctorates when they help the transhumanist cause? I mean, that would be another sign of success. It's when we are sponsoring research of one sort or another, and we can make that research happen. And maybe we can't do it directly ourselves, but we can help feed some money from companies in such a way. And in part, in answer to that, I noticed that there's a very good comment from Peter C., who is the Assistant Secretary of Longevity, which is an organization that does have some funding. It's looking at longevity, and they offer grants to get local chapters of Longevity up and running, and they would like to see applications of people who are interested in doing research, and they have other assets which they can share as well. So these are two of the questions that have been raised, and so by all means, panelists, when you get a chance to speak in a minute, build on these points. You can also address some of the other questions that have been raised. I want to sneak in one more thing at this point, which is my own thoughts about what's likely to happen next with this community that we're running. So let me briefly, if I may, share my screen one more time. Let's make sure I get the right window here. What I'm interested in doing here is showing ideas about what we should be discussing in future events in this series, building on the discussions we've had already. And I put some of these suggestions online in the EH+ community, and I'm welcoming feedback there. One point is to build on the discussions about should we be involved at all in politics, should we be trying to get legal changes pushed through, should we be forming alliances with particular groups in politics, or should we be instead trying to work with politicians of good intention in all parties, or should we instead stand aside from politics because it's such a divisive topic? And should we focus instead on research and communications and engineering? So that's one possible topic. There's a lot of discussion about the practical progress of longevity, and various people have suggested we should have a focus meeting on what should transhumanists be doing about longevity, given that it is increasingly in the public light that there could be much longer, healthier lives. A third possible meeting would look not at the successes, which we've been meant to be focusing on today, the successes, but we might instead look at the risks facing transhumanism, such as the risks of schism that Carin mentioned, risks of other adverse reactions, risks that by encouraging particular types of people or particular types of philosophy, we might end up regretting what we're doing. And a fourth possible idea, which hasn't come up so much in this meeting, but has been discussed in the background, is rather than just looking at Europe, one thing that unifies Europe is a few time zones. We could look more broadly at other parts of the world which share our time zones, the Middle East and Africa, and look at what's happening in transhumanism there. So these are four possibilities for themes for future meetings in the same series. I'll be interested in feedback on this online in the Humanity EH+ community. If you don't have access to that community already, please let me know and we'll link you in. So that was rather a lot for me. There's a huge amount been happening in the internal discussion here that I'm seeing amongst the panelists, but what I'm going to do is ask each panelist to spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes addressing any points that they would like to comment on. So I haven't figured out who to go first, so maybe I'll start with you, Hans. Yes, you're on mute. Final comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to share one idea which we discussed earlier, and that is we have in fact two dates that are a little bit useful holidays or date of celebration for our movement, and that would be the 1st of March, which is World Future Day. I think that is a great excuse to create get-togethers and do something in your location. And then we have on the 1st of October, we have it's actually Old People's Day, but we're trying to rebrand it as End Aging Day. So these two dates, I think, is something that we as an international organization should really try to gather around and you know, do joint events at this time in all different locations.
So whatever else we're doing, we should take advantage of some opportunities which are already in the wider world to create events and create online activities. Where should I go next? Anna, final comments from you. I'm not sure what you've been thinking about all this ideas that have been bouncing around. Do you have any takeaways or answers to the questions that have been raised?
Yes, I do. Well, I feel almost obliged to say a word on the topic of eradicating poverty, because I do have a degree in economics after all. So, and I still, I guess, I call myself a futurist economist, because the reason I got into economics was precisely because I didn't want to know how economics it is right now. I wanted to know how economics is going to be in the future. And because I know that we're going to automate the hell out of everything, and the jobs are going to disappear, at least most of the jobs as we know it right now. And these subjects, they really go hand in hand. So my answer to eradication of poverty would be that it's a very complex subject, of course, but it will involve the futuristic community basically speaking out to the world and speaking out to particularly economists of the world, calling for a new for new models, because the actual economic models, they will have to undergo a lot of transformations. Unfortunately, the way we have it right now, it's almost inevitable that you will have poverty, because world runs like that. And what we're going to see in the near future is more and more robotics and automation coming on the surface, and then transhumanism will become more prevalent. So people who are transhumanists, essentially, they will be more competitively skilled as opposed to the rest of the world. And that's when we will be forced to either face a very dark and scary reality where there will be more poverty, or to transform our economic models and allow for that automation to become available to everyone as a fruits of that automation.
So, amongst other things, what you're suggesting is a future meeting, or maybe a future project, should look more seriously at new economic models in which the transhumanist technologies are not just changing the lives of individual people, but changing the way society and economics can operate.
Well, yeah, that's exactly my secret future project, is the new economic models.
Well, I'm sorry to have outed your project.
Yeah, in a sense, this is my long-term mission, is to collaborate with other alternative economists, I can call them, I guess, this way, to develop those models. And basically what I want to do more is the research in the fields of robotics and economics, as how they're going to merge in a way that how we're going to automate everything and how exactly we can adapt to it as far as the money flow in our society.
Great. Let's move on. Yeah, there's lots of fascinating topics there. Let's keep working our way around this list. Sorry, there's so much chat coming in my window that I can't even say who I can't even remember who I was going to ask to speak next. I think Carin.
I have reason to believe, maybe I'm crystal ball gazing, but I have reason to believe that we are heading for an enormous amount of instability. I'm not talking years, I'm talking months. What is happening in the world right now is well into the absurd and grotesque. And the system, the economic system, the dollar, petrodollars, the enormous state debts, this is of course frightening, but it's also, well, opportunity, especially for something like transhumanism. So, like, let's be creative in the next few months and years.
And what would you prioritize us to discuss next, rather than just having the same discussion again and again? What would you like to see us focus on?
Well, transhumanism used to be derivative of humanism, and humanism was an inclusive philosophy. I miss that a little in some transhumanist discussions, but I would go for, an Occupy kind of approach, a little more.
So, transhumanism and Occupy.
Well, pirates, Occupy, Anon. I
think more generally, I mean, it might be transhumanism and European politics.
Whatever.
Okay, let's move on to Kamil. Final main comments.
Well, I posted here in the chat a link to the European Funds webpage, the funds for the R&D. And I think those of us from Europe who tend to push the technologies forward, but don't have the skills, can help startups. For example, with acquiring European funds for technologies. By the way, we need to contact politics. We need to have a foothold, a beachhead even in politics, because, well, here in Poland there is no discussion about cryonics, suspended animation, prosthetics, even, well, there are discussions about our people with disabilities, but our current political discussions are not transhuman topics. They are mostly either religious or either economical, but they don't concern the future. They concern now, then, or deep past, or World War II times.
Thanks very much, Kamil. Let's move the final comments to Carin. And I do notice that there's a question from Valdemar Ingdahl, which says something about the history of Sweden as transhumanist, which I think is a very good point. What Valdemar suggests that in order to give more of a sense of continuity, less the feeling that we're reinventing the wheel all the time, it would be good to have some of the history of the various transhumanist movements in Europe so that people can see that it's not just a brand new set of ideas, but there's a significant tradition, a lot of thinking that's already happened. So, Carin, any final comments from you, please?
Yeah, just that I think that some of the things that we've talked about today, it's good that we get as concrete as possible, so that, for example, I think that there is an interest for the FAQ, for that a lot of people would like to contribute to that. So that would be really good if we can start doing, I think, like, what is the next action to get us there. And for example, you can contact me, and I'll have my email address somewhere here for everyone, if so that we can do this as collectively and efficiently as possible. So that's one thing. And also when it comes to collaborative things and knowing what the right hand, knowing what the left hand is doing and so on, it would be really cool with a schedule, like an international schedule. If there is, I know there is no such thing today that is being updated at least, but it would be really cool with sort of like a Google schedule or anything like that, so that we can see, because perhaps we want to travel to a place. I didn't know about, for example, this catastrophic risk conference, and that is what I work with in Sweden, so that would have been really interesting to be there and so on. So something like that would be really great to just get these things going, not so that like talks like these result in as concrete things as possible.
Thanks very much. In terms of sharing what we're seeing in the chat window, I'll make sure that everything is copied out into the event page later on so that people can follow up all these suggestions and links about different conferences. And it would be great if we really did know what are the best conferences that people should be attending. Amanda, I'd like to hear some final thoughts from you, and I do notice there's questions which is particularly focused to you, saying that we've been hearing a lot about conflict, and maybe we could hear from Amanda about conflict avoidance, since you have a good track record there.
Yes, we have actually had a lot of conflict in the Singularity Network, mostly the topics that were mentioned earlier by Hank, the religion and politics, and even though they bring forth very important and very elementary questions, including how to eradicate poverty, how to deal with climate change and so forth, the problem is that it's very difficult to talk about when you have people from all these kinds of different cultures and different perspectives. And in the Singularity Network, it usually comes down to extreme right and extreme left going head to head. So we decided to alleviate some pressure by building some subgroups in which people, when they go there, they know what to expect. They know that they're going to have political conversations or religious or talks about climate change, and it seems to work. It seems to bring forth more civil conversations, because it's not people that are going to be confronted with different people's political views without wanting to, and that seems to bring up more civil people.
I think there's a lot we can all learn from that. Thanks very much, Amanda. And Hank.
Oh yes, I wanted to just go back to the topic of eradication of poverty that Anya talked about a little bit. One thing I think that's going to be happening with that is if we have economic inequity, which seems to be growing in a lot of places, you're going to end up also with longevity inequity. And this is already, like, I live in Oakland, There's a lot of economic diversity here, and there's also a lot of longevity diversity. There's actually parts of Oakland where people live 10 years shorter than other parts of Oakland, even though they're maybe only 3 or 4 miles away. So that seems like a transhumanist question. That's something that a lot of people worry about with transhumanism, that immortality and radical life extension is only going to be for the wealthy, and I think that that is actually true unless we can do something about you know, economic inequity. There's a lot of talk about economic models. I'm a little bit cynical about that. I actually think that the best way to end economic inequity is just if there was some way that people could be more generous and empathetic and charitable, some kind of compassion technology upgrade, which actually some people are working on around here in the Bay Area. I think that might be better than you know, endless talks about economic models that are just imposed on people that are still essentially selfish and don't really want to change things. Okay, that's it for me.
Well, thanks very much. And I guess we've ended up talking about lots of problems and failures and weaknesses, which wasn't really the intention. I do hope that we can pass out to the wider world the set of successes which, in the midst of all the challenges, we should be collectively proud of, and hope that people can take inspiration to build on that in their communities. But also we can join up more smartly and more intelligently in the future, so that where there is a good work in the Singularity Network, in the Humanity Plus orgs, information and elsewhere, then we can more quickly bring people up to speed and give them direction. So we've some successes under our belt, lots of challenges to talk about in the future. I look forward to seeing many of you back possibly towards the end of August. Provisionally, I have in mind that we might do these events on the last Sunday of every month, depending on people's availability. Hans, do you have a comment? You're waving your hand, but you're silent. Hans, sorry? No.
Just waving goodbye.
You were waving goodbye. All right. I think we probably should wave goodbye. So, and Hank says, by the way, although we talked about problems, he is very optimistic. I think we're all optimistic. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing any of this, despite the challenges. We are optimistic that the humanity that ties us together will triumph, and that with some help from technology we will figure out the solutions to these crises. So let's discuss that more in future events. Thank you very much for everybody for paying attention, and I hope to see more of you on the Google Plus community for H+ European supporters. Thanks all.